Most beginners and freelancers ask me about AI tools and sales systems, but nobody asks about the mental and spiritual transformation that actually made success possible. Today, I'm sharing with you the internal shifts that took me from working on nightclubs all the way to building a 139K a month business. The journey I've never fully shared on YouTube. This is not going to be about tactics or strategies, more like fundamental identity changes that had to happen before any of the external success was possible. Because the truth is, building and selling sales systems was the easy part, but the internal work was the real challenge. So before I get into the shifts, let me paint the picture of where I started. I like to call this the bouncer identity, right? So if you guys don't know, for 3 years, I worked as a nightclub bouncer, basically in nightclubs, 6 nights a week, standing at doors, checking IDs, breaking up fights, dealing with drunk people up until 5 a.m., making around $15 per night, plus whatever tips I could get, okay? So it's pretty tough, right? But what I've noticed back then is that the job itself wasn't the problem, right? The problem was the actual identity that I was in during that period of time, the actual identity that I built around it, and all the decisions, all the mental models, all of the paradigms that I had back then, okay, they were completely false, okay? And one of them is I saw myself, okay, in that identity. I saw myself as someone who traded time for money, someone who needed to be physically present, okay, literally at a job to make money. Maybe you are going through the same thing. Maybe you are working a 9 to 5. Maybe you are working just like a shit job that you want to quit. You now believe, like deep down unconsciously, maybe you'd like to say, well, I don't believe this, but unconsciously you still do deep down, okay, in your psyche. You believe success means grinding harder and longer than everyone else's. This is a complete scam. People think that you need to work super hard, like crazy hard to like achieve success. Well, obviously you're going to have to work to achieve success, but you don't need to work harder and longer than everyone else's. I never worked harder and longer than everyone else's, and I still made money more than 99% of people or 99% of human on earth. Okay? So this is complete bullshit. Now, I remember this exact moment that I realized something had to change. You know, when you are maybe like at 4 a.m., you have this idea that, okay, I really need to change. It's so interesting how it comes to you sometimes in life. It's kind of like what happened with the famous movie director, Quentin Tarantino. If you guys don't know, he had this exact same thing because he had a dream of being a movie director, okay, movie producer. And then he just had that during one night. He was like, okay, I'm really messing up. I really need to go ahead and just chase after my dreams. So it's definitely something that I relate to it, and maybe something that you are relating to it right now. So I remember it was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was breaking up a fight between two guys that I couldn't even remember why they were fighting. Because you guys know that atmosphere is pretty messed up, right? So I had this sudden realization that I could do this for another 10 years and end up in exactly the same place, right? Imagine if I stayed working as a bouncer there, right? I would not be the same person right now. I would not be making 139K a month. I would not be writing a book. I would not be talking about this on YouTube. I would not be talking to you guys. It's so interesting how you take action on that exact moment and your life just completely changes. All right. Now, what's interesting is the following. I already had technical skills, which is super, super, super interesting. Now that you are watching this, you probably have technical skills. If you know the term AI and automation sales systems, you are more knowledgeable than 99% of human beings. Because if you go outside, the term AI and automation is still new. Like people don't really know about it. Or maybe you are a developer, maybe you are a freelancer, maybe you've dabbled down on AI and automation, maybe you built something. You have a little bit of technical skills, which is exactly where I was. Like what I knew back then is I knew how to build websites, okay? And I understood a little bit of digital marketing. I even have dabbled in sales just a little bit, not that much. But those skills weren't the actual issue. Like I see this all the time. People have the skills, okay? They just have a broke, poor identity as a problem because identity is the root of all mental. Now, the reason why I had that issue what was holding me back was how I saw myself as someone who had to physically be there to trade hours of his life for dollars, which is absolutely mental. And the interesting part is that that identity was invisible to me, but it was dictating every decision I made every single day, because your identity is going to shape the way you see yourself, the way you're going to communicate with other people, the way you make decisions. Like every single thing that you do every day is dictated by your identity, because your identity is something that is unconscious. And your identity has multiple things, such as the persona, the shadow, and also the self. Okay? Now, the shadow is that is the mask that you put in front of people. All of these hidden dark things that you know about yourself are your shadow. Your persona is the way you portray yourself to society. For example, for me, it was the bouncer persona. Okay. And then the self is who you truly are when you are literally alone, when nobody's watching you. This is exactly the self. Okay. Which is exactly what you are. Now, I'm going to walk you guys through the first internal shift that had to happen for me to actually achieve success, which is called identity reconstruction, because identities cannot be destroyed. Okay. Just to give you guys some context, you cannot destroy your identity, okay? You just need to integrate it, okay? What do I mean by integrate it? Well, integrate, just acknowledge it. And then just don't let it pop all the time, because an identity is always going to be there, okay? It's within you. Now, the major shift wasn't actually learning sales systems or automation. It was completely rebuilding how I saw myself. I had to suppress the identity of the hustler who traded time for money and birth the identity of a systems builder who created value at scale. Okay? Because he who creates value will never be broke. Now, this wasn't a small adjustment. It was a complete reconstruction of who I believed I was. Okay? So let me walk you guys through what I've done. So I started with a simple journey and practice. Okay? Every morning I would write, I'm a systems builder who creates value at scale 10 times. At first, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it actually works, right? It's going to sound like you're lying to yourself, but you need to keep doing it because your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality and not reality. Okay? Just so you know this. What a man wishes, also will he believe. Okay? So the hardest part was this identity shifts created a massive internal resistance, because when you rebirth, it's called rebirth, right? It's kind of like the story of the phoenix. If you guys don't know the story of the phoenix, you know what the phoenix is? The phoenix is this beautiful bird. Yeah, this is the phoenix. So the phoenix is this peculiarly beautiful bird that gets rebirth every time you destroy it. It gets rebuilt from its ashes. Okay, so you want to be like a phoenix, right? So when you try to rebirth a new identity, obviously the old identity is gonna clash with the new one. There's called resistance. So my old identity actually fought back. There was this voice saying, "Who do you think you are? You're just a bouncer. You need to work harder, not smarter." And this is so super, super important. You might be watching this and you have this internal voice, those cowardly demons that come to you and they whisper to your head that you are a fraud. You're never going to achieve success. What? 10K, 20K a month? Come on. You're not never going to be able to achieve this. You are just destined to work in 9 to 5. This doesn't exist, okay? Like, the problem with humans is that they are so into their thoughts, eventually they confuse them with themselves. But thoughts are just as outside of your body, like birds and trees and oceans, okay? They exist outside, all right? This is why, if you guys don't know, I believe it was Mike Tyson. If you guys don't know, his trainer was actually a hypnotist, okay? And then before every fight, because these fighters would get stressed out about literally fighting someone and potentially risking their life, like this Kazumato, like he would tell him literally, nothing exists, you don't exist, only the task. Because all this cowardly demons, all these voices that come to your mind when you want to start something, you want to take action and do anything about your life, they're going to be like, you don't, like, that's not something you deserve. Right? All these voices try to creep up in your head and then make you feel insecure, right? But trust me, And they don't exist, okay? They don't exist. Because you have to understand, guys, that this identity shift had to happen before any of the external success was possible. I had tried to build businesses before, but they always reverted to trade in time for money because that's who I believed I was. Okay? Now I know you might be watching this, right? And you're nodding in your head. You're like, that's actually me, right? A lot of people actually think about this, not only you. Now, when I started operating from this new identity, the systems builder, everything changed. The way I speak, the way I talk to people, the way I make decisions, the way I view money, the way I view myself, and everything. Like, this is where exponential success happened, right? So I started looking for leverage points instead of ways to work more hours, okay? Because you don't fill your time with work. You just go to the work and treat it like play, right? This is a book that I highly recommend you guys read it. It's called Finite and Infinite Games. One of the best books you could read, okay? It talks about how infinite players see work and business as play. That way they can play long term. But finite players have this outcome that they want to achieve it the next day. And this is why they always fail, right? So always be an infinite player. Let's talk about the second internal shift, which is my relationship with money. Now, the second critical shift was completely rewiring my relationship with money. Because if you guys don't know, as a bouncer, I saw money as something you earned hourly because I was making $15 a night. And if I wanted more money, I needed more hours. So there was a direct linear relationship between money and hours you're going to put in, which is completely false, okay? Now, as a systems builder right now, I had to see money as a byproduct of value creation at scale. Once I create value, I get paid, right? So this meant breaking the mental link between time spent and money earned, right? So my old money beliefs were deeply limiting. And probably you are watching this, you have limiting beliefs about money, okay? You are afraid of spending money because you have this fear that if you spend money, well, that money is never going to come back, which is the complete opposite of how the money law works, right? Like, you spend money to make money. And you probably have this idea too. Maybe you think that if I have this money right now, I'm probably going to lose it, okay? Like, so I might as well just leave it there or maybe spend it as I go, right? Slowly but surely. That's also limiting belief. Because you think you're never going to be making that money back. Well, why do you think you're never going to be making that money back? Like, this is so belittling of yourself, right? As a human, you're capable of doing much more. And I get where the behavior comes from because I used to do it myself too. So rest assured, I also believed that money had to be earned through hard work and struggle. And I believed there was a fixed amount available. And I believed that making money was difficult and required sacrifice, okay? Now, finding and identifying these beliefs was hard because they operated below my unconscious awareness. If you don't make your unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Okay? So I used to practice where I would write down every thought I had about money for a week, which is something that we're going to talk about later in this video. So what emerged was actually shocking. Almost all my money thoughts were negative or limiting. Like, you see how unconsciously you're doing things that, like, you're being dog walked by your unconscious and you don't even know. Now, let's talk about the integration phase. This is the most important thing, the integration, because you want to integrate the new identity, okay? The most powerful moment in my journey wasn't actually learning a new tactic, landing a big client. It was the 3 internal shifts fully integrated. And I stopped trying to succeed and simply operated from a new identity where success was inevitable, right? Like, when I say this, success is inevitable. It's impossible to fail. You get this beautiful chill of there's no anxiety, nothing. Everyone is good, right? Everyone is happy and chill, right? It is impossible to fail. You already have done it before. You are already who you want to be, and your refusal is the only reason you do not see it. So 6 months into this integration phase, I like to call it shadow work integration phase, the new identity was no longer something I was consciously trying to adopt. It was simply who I was. My relationship with money was no longer something I had to think about. It was just how I naturally viewed wealth creation. And as soon as I learned that, I started to become more whole. My overall happiness went up. I started making a lot of money. That was like the month that I started making $100K a month. Now, let me give you guys practical application because maybe you are watching this, maybe you're in the grind right now. Here's how to apply these shifts to your own journey. First, start with identity reconstruction, just like we talked about. Spend 10 minutes each morning writing who you need to become for your goals to be inevitable, not who you want to be, what you need to be. Okay, what you need to be. Then write that new identity statement 10 times daily. It will feel fake at first. That's normal and necessary. The second thing is audit your relationship with money. Write down every thought you have about money for a week. Don't judge them. Like I always say, don't judge them. Just observe. Okay? Because when you catch yourself being unconscious for a day, don't beat yourself to death. Just observe. And once you observe, you're going to be disgusted and you'll never do that same thing for 10 years. Trust me. Then consciously create new beliefs that would serve your goals better. It's so interesting how us humans, we say we want success, but we never do things that actually make us successful, right? Repeat these new beliefs daily until they start to feel natural. Third thing is develop a practice for building comfort with uncertainty. That's really important. This could be meditation, prayer, journaling, or even physical activity. For me, I just go for a walk every Sunday. Actually, I take more walks nowadays. I need to go for walks because I'm writing a book. It's called The Yellow Book, where I'm talking about basically the psychology of the unconscious, okay, and how to become or emerge into the self. All right? So do the specific practice. The specific practice doesn't really matter as much as consistency and intention. I always say this, intention. This is really, really important. Intention, right? I'm going to read like a chapter of the book that I'm currently writing. Intention is what I can foresee, but willing is to want to foresee goal. But where do I find the goal? I take it from what is presently known to me. Thus, I set the present in place for the future in this manner. Because I cannot reach the future, I artificially produce a constant present. So what does that mean? Well, in simple terms, where humans can understand, is you need to have something called the willingness and the intention. Okay, and these two things, both of these principles create the feeling of being present. Okay, and the presence. All right, because you need to be present. Because when you tie yourself to an outcome, this is where you become depressed. Okay, so you need to focus on the 80-20 and just be patient. All right. Now, how do you know if you're making progress? These are the 3 clear signs. Decisions become easier when they naturally align with new identity, right? You stop needing constant validation or results to keep going because you are in yourself. The work starts to feel like less like pushing and more like being pulled. This is what I like to call being like you are so into the task that it becomes play. This is exactly what I recommend you guys have. And remember, the systems and strategies are important, but they're the easy part. Anyone can learn cold email, build automation. The internal shifts are what separates those who succeed from those who succeed consistently at a higher and higher levels. Now, in closing, this journey from bouncer to building our own 39K a month business wasn't primarily about tactics or strategies. It was more about fundamentally changing who I was at an identity level and how to help you guys reconstruct your current identity into an identity that's actually successful, that wants to have financial freedom or location freedom, because this is what humans want. They want freedom. Okay, if you strip down the words financial, okay, location, okay, but in reality, you want freedom. You say you want to be rich, but you just want to have the ability to be rich. You say you want to travel the world, but you just want to have the ability to travel the world, okay? And for me, like I can just pack and just go to Tokyo right now. I don't know, like Bali, Moscow, anything, but I'm not going to do it, but I still have the ability to do it. This is what humans want. So whatever stage you are in right now, remember that your biggest limitations aren't external. They're always going to be invisible beliefs and identities you're operating from without even realizing it. And at this point right now, maybe you are in your depth, but the depth are required for you to achieve the heights. Okay? So change those and everything else changes with them. So get out there, take action. I believe in you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.